Good morning. Thank you for being here. So I am Patricia Gruber. I am the Technical Director for the Office of Naval Research Global. This is a little bit of a crash course on government defense funding between myself and my colleague here. The Office of Naval Research, headquartered in Washington, is the science and technology provider for the Navy and the Marine Corps. Science and technology in our world means basic research, applied research, advanced technology demonstrations. So we fund everything from very fundamental university research, TRL 0 or 1, and then we'll take that normally to a prototype stage, maybe around TRL 5 or 6, at which point then we will hand it off to, we will help to transition it to the R&D community or the acquisition community, or folks like my colleague here who will do rapid fielding and get that technology into the hands of the fleet and the forces. So I'll talk in a few minutes about what kind of technologies I'm referring to. That's the Office of Naval Research. The Office of Naval Research Global, which I oversee, is essentially the international arm of ONR. And our job is really threefold. You know, we're out literally all around the world looking for really good research. And I want to add to the message that Rami, my message really is no country has a lock on good research, on smart people, on great ideas. And if we really want to be understanding and accessing the best technology that's out there, you can't just stay in the U.S. You need to get out and build those partnerships, be aware of what's going on technically. So we're looking for good science. We're trying to understand technology trends so that we're not surprised by anything. And the other thing that we do is to create collaboration, create partnerships. For us, success is maybe we fund a grant and we link an Israeli researcher at Technion or somewhere with a researcher in the U.S. or with the Naval Research Laboratory. So it's about building those partnerships both at the investigator level, but also we work with other governments to create government-to-government partnerships where we identify mutually beneficial projects that we will jointly invest in so that we can advance technology for the good of both parties. We have folks at ONR Global. We are spread in offices in London, Prague, Singapore, Tokyo, Santiago, Sao Paulo. As I said, good research happens all around the world. We have associate directors that are out, visiting various countries, institutions, looking for that good science. Most of what we fund is basic research, so it's all open and publishable. We don't get into classified or export-controlled technologies. And so that's the focus on the academic level. We also have a group of people called science advisors. They're the ones who are literally co-located with various operational commands. So they sit in all of the numbered naval fleets, the Marine Expeditionary Forces around the world, some of the planning and budgeting functioning commands for the Navy and the U.S., and their job is to recognize what are the problems of the warfighter. What are the technology needs of the Navy and the Marine Corps? Then they go back to ONR and ONR Global and they say, well, what technology solutions might be available that can help solve some of these problems? Or what's the future? What's the next weapon system likely to look like? If it's directed energy? Or, what are some better ways that we can train the warfighter? And they try to basically make that match between the operational forces and what's going on in the science and technology community. So they're really interesting people for folks like you to interact with because, again, they understand the needs, but they also understand what the technology is in the pipeline, and they're kind of trying to make those matches. And then, as I said, we also have a group in Washington that's really working sort of the government-to-government project agreements. So in ONR Global, we are a funding agency. So as I said, we fund things in different ways. We can fund a visiting scientist. So if you have a good idea or some results or want to try to create a partnership in the U.S., we can fund an international scientist to go visit the U.S. or go to a conference, have that interaction with your technical peers. We also will oftentimes fund conferences or workshops on specific areas that have naval relevance. And then we can also fund seed grants. So our grants are usually on the order of 50 to 100K a year over 1 to 3 years. But ultimately, again, success for us is then to link that to the larger Office of Naval Research program back in the U.S. So that's sort of how we do what we do. In terms of what technologies are we interested in, I think most relevant to this conference is the work that we do. We have a department at ONR that focuses on expeditionary and irregular warfare. So a lot of that having to deal with, again, detecting threats, a lot of information systems, sorting through a lot of surveillance data. We're also interested in understanding the environment that we're operating in. A lot of growth we're seeing in autonomy and unmanned systems. And so I saw examples of a lot of these things in the brief presentations of the finalists. So I'm actually very excited to sit in on the follow-on session and learn more about it. That's really all I wanted to say. So as I said, our interests are very broad, but also span the spectrum of very basic research to a more prototype stage. And we are really interested in your good ideas. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going immediately to Adam Tarsi. And we decided to start with Dr. Patricia in order to give you the idea of what they are doing. And please remember, and I'm speaking mainly to the startup people here, to the people who are looking for big funding. Maybe sometimes it's a little bit threatening to go to the USA and start filling so many papers in order to get grants and funds, but this is a great opportunity. And let's not forget something very important. We have in Israel one of the most important groups under the Ministry of Defense, MAFAT. They are not here, so I'm going to present them, which are doing an extraordinary job in making Israel a better country in R&D. So also they have their tools, but let's go directly to Adam, who is the Chief of Staff of the Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office, the CTTSO, which execute the International Integrity Research and Development Program to combat terrorism. I believe that he will add more about his role and what can we do together with him. Thank you, Adam, for coming.
Guys, is this hot? Yep, good, thanks. Well, thank you very much. I mean, we've had a 20-year relationship with the government of Israel, developing combating terrorism capabilities that are useful for operators in the field. This partnership has been extraordinary, and it led us to come here today to try to offer alternative ways for the innovators and entrepreneurs in Israel to gain access to U.S. markets, to venture capital, and to the U.S. government so that we can have a better understanding of what you're developing and what can be useful for our operators. CTTSO is a user-based organization. It is focused on the operator in the field, the guy that carries the gun, the badge, the detector, into the operational environment to combat terrorism. Most of the work done in the U.S. government is prescribed to us by our seniors, right? The generals and the admirals, they tell us what things that they need to combat whatever mission, to execute whatever mission they deem important. Our organization takes a little different approach to that. We simply ask the operators in the field what they need to do their job better. What do they need in their current mission space that's not available? Then we aggregate those operators. So anybody across the U.S. government with a mission or a need to combat terrorism is welcome to the table. There is no barrier to entry. We've got the New York Fire Department and NYPD, Seattle Fire, all the way up to our Joint Special Operations Command and CIA. Anybody in the middle that combats terrorism from the operational perspective is welcome to bring their needs to our table. We ask that body of users to self-prioritize their needs. So across the law enforcement community, the military, the intelligence community, they all sit together and they figure out which ones are the most relevant. Because no matter who you are, you have a limited amount of resources. And then we take that list and we publicize it. Sometimes openly, sometimes not, depending on the need. But we try to find solutions. And my organization is in the solution-finding business. We build nothing. You build everything. Our job is to connect the operational requirement, the need, with your brain power. So to the extent that we can engage a forum like this, be it in Tel Aviv or in Pretoria or in Washington, D.C. or Silicon Valley, we get our message out. We find more opportunities to solve our needs. So we are focused on user-based, interagency, rapid prototyping. I need your solution to be ready in the next year or two. The problems will change in 5 years. And thank God we've got people like Patricia and DARPA and others that are looking at what the world's going to be like in 15 years and trying to develop solutions for that unknown. We aren't in that business. We stand on the shoulders of the geniuses and figure out how to turn their great ideas into products that are useful for the field. Fortunately, that's what a startup is trying to do as well. You're taking your brain power and trying to turn it into a product that people want. And we want to encourage that. Now, the U.S. government is not real good at this. We've got a lot of red tape. It's a challenge for you not only to find us, but to engage us, to get paid for your brain power, and to execute a project that can be delivered to a customer in the U.S. And so we recognize that, and we're taking initiatives to try to shortcut that process a little bit. For me, the traditional providers, the Boeings and the Elbits and the Rafaels, are great partners, but they know who I am and they know how to get to me. They can knock on the door and tell me the great things that they're developing. I've got that process pretty well wired. I'm looking for non-traditional providers. I want the people that either have no interest in working with the U.S. government or just don't know how to gain a foothold. So we're developing challenges and prizes, and this is one fine example of it, where we act almost as a honeypot. Frankly, the $100,000 prize is going to make a big difference to one of the companies. It doesn't make any difference to me. I've already won. The 43 submissions provided are a huge deal. We got to see the innovative spirit, the technical expertise, the things that you're working on, and we got to encourage you to apply those solutions, or at least think about them, to a problem that can be solved in national security. The nice thing, give me a minute. The nice thing about doing a competition like this is I get to introduce myself and my needs to your organizations, and as you are thinking about solutions, you'll think about, hopefully, about CTTSO and your ability to solve some of our problems. In addition to prizes and competitions, we do a broad agency announcement, which is a very traditional way for the U.S. government to engage ideas. We start, though, with a single-page quad chart, a one-page document that describes your idea. Rather than you have to develop a 50-page proposal and spend months doing so, we don't want you to stop the development. Just send us one slide that says, here's what I'm doing that I think can solve your problem. We'll help work with you down that process to pull more information out of you and determine if there's enough there for an R&D contract. And finally, although Rami stole my thunder a little bit, Mafat runs an extraordinary program. Not only do they do that on the behalf of the Defense Department, but they do it on behalf of the interagency. So if there's a police or an intelligence community application, they can aggregate those needs and present them through TSWG to the U.S. market. So bringing your ideas to the Mafat or to the other organizations in Israel get you a leg up in dealing with us. So I'm sorry, ma'am, to cut you off so rudely. You had one question before we turn it over to the next speaker?
How easy is it for Israeli startups to work directly?
I'm sorry, I only heard the Israeli startup.
Okay, so how easy is it for an Israeli startup to work directly with you? So I understand there's like great ideas here and it's interesting to you.
Yep.
How easy is it for your organization to work directly with a foreign startup like Israel?
Well, easy is a matter of perspective. It's a lot easier to work with us than it is to work with the general acquisition system. We have our own contracts in finance and security, so we can streamline some of that. The way that we'll do it is twofold. We'll either engage in a competitive process where we open our need up to the whole world, and you will be selected as the most viable solution based on your one page and then evolving to a detailed proposal that we say that's the right answer. That's the traditional pathway. Another way is through prizes and challenges where we can illuminate your capability through an event like this. We get to know that you have something special, and then we kind of take it off to the side. We engage in a direct contract with you. The one rub, which may be in the noise, but since you're a business community, I'll give it to you anyway. we'll do a fixed price contract with a non-U.S. agency because of the accounting rules in the U.S. So I can't verify your costs under an accounting system approved by the U.S. government. That requires me to engage in a fixed price contract. Now, that's a great deal for the U.S. government because it moves all the risk to the private firm. However, it is a way that you can guarantee an income stream provided you deliver what you promise to under the terms of the contract. And that's all easily negotiated. And you're very fortunate that in our case, we've got Shani Yacobi in my office that lives in Modi'in. She is here every day and able to work with you on the finer points of developing your proposal, in making sure that the statement of work makes sense, in helping you understand a contract, in getting you involved in the prizes and challenges which require no contract, or any other mechanism to get to deal with us. Did that answer enough?
One very important word in Israel, especially for the people who came overseas, is savlanut, patience. You need a lot of savlanut in order to fill all this paper, to go through the process. But at the end, believe me that you get it. And the beauty of this panel is that we have both people from the government, also people from the private business, and an investor. But as I mentioned before, Mafat from Israel, I'm very proud to have here, and I identify only two, but very important commanders of Mafat in the past, General Shlomo Inbar and Professor General Itzik Ben Israel. Please raise your hands so everybody will see you, because you have done a great job, and thank you very much. And I'm going directly to Dr. Ed Morton. Dr. Ed Morton is the Chief Technology Officer of Rapiscan Systems. Following an academic career with research focus on X-ray imaging, he joined Rapiscan System, where he has worked primarily on real-time X-ray tomography for hold baggage screening and high-energy X-ray cargo inspection. I give the floor to you, Dr. Morton, please.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I thank the organizers of this event for giving me the opportunity to just say a few words on some of my background. I thought maybe a little history lesson would be in order. Some 20 years or so, I was a university academic, still in short trousers and, all that kind of stuff. I decided that another 30, 40 years in university wasn't the future that I was looking for, so I needed to somehow find a mechanism to escape. So I decided it would be simple to create a spin-out business and be a startup entrepreneur from the university. So 3 years later, and one very major terrorist event later that happened on 11th of September 2001, I found my way out from the university into my own business. So I'm an X-ray physicist by background, and the business that I took out from the university was really just a twinkle in my eye. It was a concept about how to do three-dimensional baggage screening. And I had some university funding, which I'd won from the UK government, and some other funding from the oil industry, as it happens. And I took this together and made a pitch. I managed to get in front of in fact, there's one or two people here that may remember the conference, the Security Technology Conference in 2001, in November 2001, so 2 months after the 9/11 attacks. And I stood up and said how I was going to change the world with this new technology. And it was a bit like going to a honeypot, because there were lots of people started coming to me, which was, as a startup entrepreneur, was very unusual, because usually I was going to everybody else. Long and short of it is, I ended up with corporate venture capital, so corporate venture from Rapiscan Systems. Eventually, we did a deal, sold the business to Rapiscan, and I moved to the role of technical director for Rapiscan Europe, Middle East, Africa. We then decided that the business that I'd created was now had demonstrated its technologies and was moving towards the market. And so in this new role, we decided to start up a second business. This time was the cargo inspection business, where we use high-energy linear accelerators to image trains and cars and trucks and all sorts of things. We grew that business really from absolutely nothing, and it's now the largest business of its type in the world, with revenues of hundreds of millions of dollars. But I guess I'd learned a lot from when I started my first business to when we started the second business about how to do real business and real entrepreneurship. I've now moved to the global chief technical officer role, and now starting to really look at how do we integrate new technologies into our business, where those technologies have not been done as a startup, but have been done as more of a licensing deal. So one of the reasons I'm in Israel this week is to look at some of the great technologies which are being done here. And there's one particular company that we're working with who hopefully will make a deal and take that out to the international market. So I think all the time we have to balance risk versus reward versus innovation. Innovation is expensive, risk is uncomfortable, reward is very hard to achieve. So if we set out for massive rewards, minimum risk, and no innovation, we'll fail. If we set out for major innovation with no risk, we will fail. And so we have to all the time be balancing these things. And I think, there's always this kind of dilemma between venture capital, government funding, and corporate venturing. And how do you strike the right balance between the funding source that you need for your particular application? So we saw some programs this morning, some of which were suited, I think, well to corporate ventures, others of which are very much in the venture capital side, as we sort of balance that risk-reward innovation area. And then finally, of course, security is a highly regulated area. So it's very important to build and grow relationships with all aspects of the government, but in particular government regulatory departments. So you need to become personally attached, with the regulators, so the regulators understand the way you're thinking, the way you're driving, and also for us to understand how the regulators are working. Because very often we don't actually know what the regulator needs our equipment to do. So we'll go through a regulatory process, and at the end we'll get a certificate that says pass if we're lucky, and often you go through the process several times to get to that point. So it's having an understanding of the market, having an understanding of the regulator, and having that commitment and that belief that one day you will get there. And I think that that's just really the important thing. So.
Thank you, Dr. Morton. I'm going directly to our Israeli friend, Mr. Gill Lamellas. Gill Lamellas is an entrepreneur and an investor providing guidance and mentoring to a board base of entrepreneurs and funding teams. And I'm going to ask him the first question. We have here today, we heard about 8 startups. Beautiful, excellent, new technologies, everything. You as an investor in such companies, what do you suggest them after you heard the way that they presented their companies?
Thank you. Maybe I want to start a few words about my fund, which I think we're a bit different than the regular VCs in Israel. And the main difference is that we are, in every company we invest, we are deeply involved in the day-to-day business, especially in the go-to-market strategy. And I think this is, regarding your question, many startups in Israel, they talk a lot about the technology. Even today, you saw the presentations, and usually, and it's not just today, a lot of companies that come to us for looking for investment, there's something missing, and the something is, what's your go-to-market strategy? They're all very, very focused about building an amazing product, that solving something, great technology. Usually the team have an amazing background, many times from the army. And then when I ask the question, okay, so what's the go-to-market strategy? The answers are usually between, we're not there yet. And I think that also today, when you see such of companies, I would recommend them from day one, they need someone to think what's going to be the marketing strategy. It's not something that you can postpone and wait until the product is ready. It's something that you have to think from day one, and it's going to influence what's going to be the product at the end. A lot of companies are failing not because they have a bad product, because they didn't think from day one what's the go-to-market strategy. And this is what we do in our fund. Usually we choose only companies that we see exactly how the product is going to be sold into the market, and not just how good is the product. There's many, many products that are average products that are controlling the world, and there's a lot of amazing products that nobody knows about them. So I would say this is my view.
Thank you very much. I open the questions to the audience. I have so many questions, but I think it is going to be much more important that you, who take a part in this MIT Enterprise Forum, will ask questions to the people here. Who is the first? No one. Yes, there is one. Please present yourself.
I'm Aviv from Outbrain. A question for Adam. Based on your, I presume, unique experience, do you have any tips for rapid prototyping?
Wow. Yeah, sorry. Do I have any tips for rapid prototyping? I guess I need your help a little bit to narrow that scope.
What advice would you give to someone who comes to you with an idea in terms of making it practical? How do you help them improvise?
Gotcha. Yeah, well, good. I can answer that one, so thank you. That was good evolution. I do none of that, but we'll connect you with the operator who actually has the need for it. So there are two ways to attack a problem. One is by me sort of prescribing the solution. That's a recipe for trouble, right? The purpose of this sort of a relationship is to harness the brain power out there and figure out what problems it can solve in many areas. So you've got some innovation. It's our program manager's job to connect that to the needs of their operational community and then connect you personally with those operators. So the operator is influencing, here is how this prototype needs to be useful in the field. Here's how it needs to look, the buttons it should have, right down to those details. So you understand the ease of use, the man-machine interface, all of these items where, as you're developing the background technology, sometimes aren't right in front of you. You're working on the core capability, and we're trying to help turn that capability into a product. And so the only body that can really do that for us is that operator. And that's what we'll do as the middleman almost, as the program manager. We'll connect you with them to make sure that you're hearing it right from their mouth.
Maybe, Ed, you would like to add as well?
I think the best way to get a rapid prototype out is to address the thing that's most difficult first. It's so easy to do the easiest thing first because the most difficult thing is going to come and work itself out in the end. But if you do that, almost certainly you'll never have your rapid prototype. So really think about the most difficult thing first. Try and get that figured out. And then for all the easy bits, use stuff that's already there. You know, get your Arduino or whatever it is and just make something work. It doesn't matter how cool it looks. Just get it to work. But address that difficult thing first, and then you'll be successful.
Thank you. Norbert, please.
Connections to other parts of the government like HLS and Treasury? Yes.
Okay. TSWG, the organization that we sort of manage, was built actually to be an interagency body. So the Department of Homeland Security is a major part of TSWG. We, as the Defense Department, just execute it on behalf of those communities. So everybody from the Border Patrol to the Secret Service to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, all of them are part of the organization.
So the next part is, if the solution is basically dual use, in other words, it can't be valuable to the government community, intelligence, whatever, and the main value proposition is actually in the commercial community, business community, are you still willing to get involved in it?
I would much prefer those, frankly. The commercial market will bear most of the reward for the company. It will keep you in business. It will allow you the capital that you need in order to make advancements. For me, I can modify your product to my particular solution at a fraction of the cost it would take me to build it from scratch. So if you're marching down, Palantir, what a great example Palantir is for some of you in the advanced analytics space. Built for an entirely different purpose that had application to the U.S. government. We can partner with them for a bit of a spiral development off of that, modify it for our particular need, and the commercial financial market bears the burden of the bulk of the investment. So great deal for the U.S., yeah. Happy to do that.
I would like to add to this question. What is, when you're speaking with the private sector, usually the process is very quick. or let's say it is much quicker than in the government, what is the cycle, what is the time that it takes usually for a company to come to your organization till it hopefully gets the positive answer?
That's really the it depends kind of question. If I have an already presented need, I have a business cycle that manages that need. And so in February, we will publish our needs for the next fiscal year. We'll spend 8 or so months going through the 2,000 or so responses that we'll get to identify the 50 that meet our 50 requirements most appropriately, and we'll begin awarding a contract. So from the day I present it till the day you're under contract is 9 months to a year. Now that's an awful long time, but that's a prescribed business cycle. In addition to that, we've got mechanisms for doing emergent needs. So if you've developed the next, some bolt of lightning that's come to you, and you're solving a long-standing standoff explosives detection problem, for example, we will make that process shorter. We can go directly to you. We can also engage in things like the prizes and the challenges where we can reward the work that you've already done and it contribute to the advancement of it. So, I'm sorry for the it depends part. I can't do much worse than 9 months to a year, and I know that doesn't help most startup companies, and that's why having the U.S. government as your initial market is not often the best strategy. You might want a commercial market that you're driving toward, and you engage with us for modification and improvement and spirals.
Is there a mechanism like we have in Israel, the Office of the Chief Scientist, which supports startups? Do you have a kind of mechanism to support startups coming out with new technology or special technology or of technology of interest, maybe also in Rapiscan as well? I will ask you.
We do, but in typical U.S. fashion, it's not the most streamlined process. Small Business Innovative Research provides grants, SBIR, provides grants to small companies to further the work that you do. I wouldn't necessarily say DARPA is focused on startups, but they're focused on brand new technology, and to the extent that that makes sense, they can grant money. ONR Global provides grants that were required, and grants are, you I'm sure already know about them, but they're a little less prescriptive than a contract is. There are elements in the U.S. government, and there are becoming more every day as we realize that, frankly, innovation is not resident in the U.S. government or in our government labs, not nearly to the extent it was before, say, the Manhattan Project, and on a decreasing curve every year. Most of the innovation takes place in the commercial sector, and we're slowly coming around to that and finding mechanisms to get to you.
Ed, would you like to add something? Maybe you have an idea how to help young companies coming with new technology?
Yeah, I think, within our organization, we have a process that we go through. It can be very quick, it could be very long, depends on the complexity of the application or technology we're looking at, how well it fits our core business and the kind of revenue projections that the team are looking at. So as Gill says, understanding how to get your technology out to market for us is really important, because just because you've got a whiz-bang thing doesn't mean you ever make any money from it. And unfortunately, our job is eventually to make some money out of stuff. So we have to look very carefully at that whole market side. But like a startup, Rapiscan is heavily engaged in working with the government, because we need to understand the government priorities right from the very beginning. So we have a whole organization in Northern California whose really their sole function is to do, first of all, government contract work, and secondly, internal R&D work. And that group works with all the people around the table here and many others in the US in order to secure funding that is beneficial to the government, but can also be made beneficial for the company. We also work with the European Union. We work with the UK and other agencies to extract ideas and funding from wherever we can to build partnerships and collaborations, because they add value in the end to all the parties concerned.
Thank you very much. Since we are running out of time and I don't want anybody to leave the room while having a question that he didn't ask, is there anybody who would like to ask a question from the audience? If not, we are going to conclude this panel. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Can you tell us about FST Biometrics?
Yeah, one of our portfolio companies, it's called FST Biometrics, and it's a company in the area of facial recognition with a bit different approach. This company was founded by General Farkas that his idea was, instead of looking for the bad guys, let's identify the good guys. And if we know who are all the good guys, it's going to be easier to find the bad guys. So FST Biometrics developed a system which is a software that can be implemented on standard hardware and cameras. And just for example, any building in the world that is using cards for identification, we replace all the cards by just a camera that identify the people that we enrolled into the system. So, for example, if there's a company that has 10,000 workers, each of them, we take one picture of the person with a regular 5-megapixel camera, we put it into the system, and then in every entrance, we put our camera, and we can give, I would say, almost 100% identification about the person. So if you come to the door and the system does not recognize you, that's the story. But at the end game will be to replace all the access cards in the world with our system. Thank you.
I would like to thank all panel members who did the long way in order to come to Israel. Dr. Patricia Gruber, Mr. Adam Tarsi, Dr. Ed Morton, and Mr. Gill Lemel for being here today. I would like very much to thank you for taking a part in this conference, and the MIT forum as well. Thank you very much.